came on the canvas quite uninvited. I don't know who she is, I don't know where she's come from. I asked her where she'd come from, but she wouldn't tell me. She said it was no business of mine. A friend of mine looking at this picture said, "This lady's eaten too many fatty chips."
Theodore Major, splendid name. He's a 75-year-old Wigan artist who's lived in the area all his life. When we visited him, I asked him if it was because he believed, like Hamlet, that a man could be bounded in a nutshell, yet still count himself a king of infinite space. Let Theo speak for himself.
Rembrandt, the painter, said that a man needn't move from his village, that all the beauty and all the life and all the power is in his own village. It doesn't matter where I'm born. If I was born in a forest, I'd paint the trees. A pupil came to me with a picture, and he said, I could hardly make it out what it was supposed to be. He said, well, that's a hell. I said, is it a hell to a Chinaman, or a Japanese, or a Negro? This is what it's all about. I sit here, or rather I stand here, and I paint Lancashire, but I'm painting it everywhere.
All beauty, all life, all ugliness, all joy, all love is here in Apley Bridge. Yes. For you, is it?
Yes. Even in the family. If they put me in a room or a house where a family were living, I could paint everything from that family. It's in a baby. It's in a man or a woman, and the relationship between these people. It's a wonderful life to be a painter, because I believe that only painting is free. It's the only free form of expression. A man like Mozart, when he wrote 3 of his greatest symphonies, he didn't want them. They'd gone out of fashion. And they were never he never heard them play. But a painter is a freedom. If I want to paint a woman with a dozen arms and legs on, I'm quite free to paint a woman with a dozen arms and legs on, and no one can stop me. But the musician has to sell his work. Someone has to play it before he can hear it. And it's the same with the writers. They can write the novels. They don't get to the public unless they're published. But the painter is free. In painting this picture, this man seemed to express everything in his hands. The hands of a workman, powerful. He seemed to stand there like a rock. His face was chiselled out, almost chiselled out of stone. This old lady was one of my favourite characters. She was a wonderful old woman. She used to work for us, and she would never take more than a few shillings for a day's work. One morning she came, and the bucket was missing. So she hunted round, found the chamber pot from underneath the bed, and mopped the front step, which seemed to shock the neighbourhood. This old lady lived in the village. She was a great character, and everything she said was opposite to what was actually happening. If it was raining, she said, we'll get sunstroke. If it was sunny, She said, what have we done to deserve this? When children go to an art gallery, they see signs which say, do not touch. Sometimes there's even a rope round the picture so that they can't even get near to it. Now when children come to my house, whether they're children or whether they're grown-ups, I say, feel the paint. Run your hands across the paint. Feel the texture. And you're halfway to feeling the beauty of the picture. The only way that I've learned how to paint is looking at children's paintings. They have an innocence, a cleanness, and a wonder of life.
Are you saying that all children of all lands are potentially artists?
They're all artists. Well, I was an artist when I was one. I was an artist before I was born. I'll be an artist when I'm dead. And when I'm dead and they bury me and they put on the gravestone, rest in peace, I shall get up and carve it out again. I'll never rest in peace. Do you really think that a man like Beethoven is resting in peace? No, when I see children, before they go to school, and the wonderful things they can do and express, I'm amazed. The imagination of children. And then, like William Blake said, again, that the child, he goes on until the prison gates close round him. But you can't teach art. You can't teach art. It's a spiritual, emotional thing. You can't teach it. I remember seeing things and collecting things in my mind and always looking at things. I remember looking at the first impressions, and I must have been sat on my mother's knee, of the fire and the beautiful shapes of the flames and the colours and the light reflected in the brasswork round the fire. And I saw on the cheap wallpaper the sun making a splash of orange light. I remember those things. Other things I don't remember. But I collect anything that's useful to a painter, and all these impressions and seeing these things. When I start a painting, I get a bit of white paint and I get a board. I don't know what I'm going to paint. I just start. Put all remembrances, pictures out of my mind and just start painting, and the thing grows. But I'm digging back to all the impressions that I've felt all my lifetime, the wonderful things I've seen. I don't know how people can walk about and see nothing. I was walking down the road one day with my wife, Kathleen, and I looked up and I, look at that beauty, I said. And there's a man going past. He looked up, you know, he couldn't see anything, you know. Because I was talking about a great big black cloud that was going overhead. Now, it's a matter of seeing. I went to the Wigan Fair one weekend. They used to have a fair on the market square. It's a car park now.
Oh.
And there were these shows all round. And I was always looking at people and recording, you know, it was sinking down somewhere. And there were several side shows. And one said, over the top, the ugliest woman in the world. I thought, I'll have a penneth of that, because I've never seen an ugly woman. So I went in, and it was something, a square kind of tent with a kind of rope round, something like a boxing ring. And this woman was sat on a chair in the middle. She was a little deformed woman. And I looked at her, and she looked at me. And I thought, how beautiful. I've never seen such beautiful eyes that old woman had. And she looked at me, and we had to move on, and her eyes followed me because she knew what I was thinking. For the first time in her life, someone had seen some beauty and had to move out. It was a wonderful experience. When I got outside, the woman who was shouting about the show, tights and all kind of things, a shapeless figure and so on, and lipstick and powder and hair done up. And I thought, there is the ugliest woman in the world. Yeah, you don't pay to go in. There she is. Deformed people are not ugly. The ugliest people to me are some of the film actresses. But some of the old people in Wigan, they've been through it and so on. Their beauty was a spiritual beauty. When I go to bed at night, I'm exhausted with looking at things or with painting. I absorb them like a sponge. That's all I am. I'm a kind of servant to put these things on a board or a canvas. I don't come into it. But I'm not a servant who does what he's told, Bill. I'm a servant who does what he knows is best for people. If there's any good in me, it's from my parents. The way I was brought up. Poor, very poor. But my word, what beautiful people. Working people. My father worked in the mill. My mother worked in the mill. She died with bronchitis, due to working in the mill. But those people had a vision of something. Today I don't see it much of a vision anywhere. But I've painted a lot of works and factories because they're round about. But when I paint them, when I paint a little man going down the road, that little man isn't me. No, it's everyone. But it's the relationship of that little man with that works. With those chimneys. And my word, how beautiful they are. In Wigan, where I lived, about a mile away, there was a great works. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. A great ironworks. And at night, when they opened the furnaces, the great blast furnaces, the light lit up the sky for 60, 70 or 80 miles. They brought the Zeppelins over in the First World War. But when I looked at my playmates in the street, on the wet pavement, and this glow, it was just as though these children were walking on fire. It's so wonderful and beautiful, all these things. When I look across at the works, there used to be a works across there, it's gone. But I still see it. It'll never come to me. But those chimneys, on a grey, misty morning, they're like pencils of greyness. And on a snowy landscape, and these pencils standing in the sky. This is a spiritual beauty to me because it's a relationship. If I paint the works, I'm really painting the people in the works. If I paint a train, it's the people in the train. I can see the railway line from the room where I paint in. And I saw this, well, I saw it so often, little excursion train about 2 o'clock going to Southport, taking these people. I thought I'll paint that. So I painted the train. In the picture you can't see the people, of course. You see the train, but the people are inside. And then I painted the sky, and I had to get a sky which was a promise of more rain or a promise of a brightening up. I had to mix that grey. It took me a long time just to get the right grey. Well, there's a little train. Even a train can be beautiful. Well, many people believe that painters use this kind of brush. I use this kind of brush, but I also use this kind of brush. If I'm working on a big landscape, I get the palette knife, I get the colour out of the tubes, and I get the colour on this palette knife, and I stand with my back to the picture and throw the colour over my shoulder onto the picture. Then I get the big brushes, like this, from the fine brush to that size, and I sweep the colour together. It's a wonderful experience to see the colour on the canvas and sweep it together to form a picture. Sometimes I use this kind of brush, which is a wire brush, to get different effects. I would use a sweeping brush if I needed to. I use my fingers, I use a piece of rag, I use anything to paint with. The frames I make as a relaxation to painting. I saw the wood, I put the nails into the frames. I've made hundreds of frames. This is a relaxation to the actual painting. But one day I was painting an industrial scene, and I usually put a little man walking about. But on this day, for some reason, he was running. I didn't tell him to run, but he was. I thought, what's he running from? I had to paint the next picture to see what he was running from. And then the skeleton started coming on. And what happened?
Again, you were surprised by the appearance
Quite surprised. I don't tell the pictures what to be or what not to be. And at first they were fighting. And then they were helping each other. And the skies were dark and they became terrible. But after a time, after I painted about 100, these pictures began to change again. And these little figures, these little skeleton figures, skeletons are beautiful, very beautiful thing, they began to rise in the sky. And then another picture came, and it was the end of that series. It was like a heaven. One of the two nudes, and a baby and mother listening to baby. And a beautiful landscape with a lovely sunset. I knew then that was the end of that. The curator from Manchester came, and he looked through some of the paintings, and he said, "Oh, I must have one of these atomic paintings in the gallery." I said, "Well, you can't have one of the atomic paintings in the gallery because it's a series of paintings, and to take one out would be wrong." But after painting that series, I began to paint a series of paintings about woman. I don't tell a woman to sit there and I'll paint you. I used to do. I know how to paint a woman, I know how to paint a man or a child. But I'm trying to paint the feelings of a woman. Oh my God, I've got so many surprises. What those figures do. Twist round, dance about, and all kind of things. I've no control over them. I tell them to stand like a Grecian statue with one hip a little bit higher than the other, and the weight on one leg. They take no notice. They just do exactly what they want. But I believe that there is this in woman. I'm not painting a woman as she looks. What she herself feels like. When you look at children, they bounce about on the couch, they dance about, they fling their legs up and so on. Well, that should be in everyone. It's in those nudes. I can't stop them. But I think it's something that hasn't been done quite like that before.
Your late wife, God rest her soul, a lovely woman whom I knew and loved, was also a very fine painter. Did she become a painter because of you, or was she, for want of a better phrase, already a painter? Well, was it your example that encouraged her?
I met her at the art school. And one day I said, "Why don't you go into the life class and draw the figure?" She was designing crayons and all that kind of stuff. And she said that the teacher said that she wasn't good enough to draw the figure. And my wife believed that for years and years. And she produced beautiful pictures of trees and all, but no figures. And then when she had a stroke, and she was lying there, I gave her a little book. And I said, "Draw something." I don't believe in these doctors who say you must lie there quietly until you're better. You should make yourself better. You should will yourself to be better. But she drew some figures to show the trouble and the agony that she'd been through. And then suddenly, little figures began to appear. And the reason is that she'd forgotten what the people at the art school had told her, that she couldn't draw figures. And after that, she had this stroke. She couldn't speak for 10 years, but she produced the most wonderful pictures, drawings of figures I've ever seen. And she loved music, of course, and she loved listening to music while she was drawing figures. Now, I'm not like that. I can't stand anything when I'm painting. No one's ever seen me paint. I go into that room, and this battle begins. And my word, it is a battle. And sometimes you win a little bit, sometimes you lose. But when the picture doesn't come off, I remember an old man in the pub who was talking about food, and he said, "If something doesn't agree with me, I goes on hating it until it does. Now, when a picture doesn't agree with me, I go on painting until it does. And a picture may have been started 50 years ago or 60, and I may finish it this week. You go on like that. And then a silly critic went to the last show that I had and said that she couldn't criticise these pictures because there were no dates on. There's no date on any work of art. Art is universal, it's timeless. It'll go on and on and on. They're the only two big paintings I've sold in Lancashire. I've sold them outside Lancashire, but never in Lancashire. But two big paintings, one the crucifixion at Wigan and the other a Wigan scene. And I was thinking, well, they'll put these pictures up and they'll pass them round to galleries, but they've never been seen since.
If you look at the two houses here, one begins to see what you mean. How many paintings do you reckon you have in these two houses, approximately?
About 3,000. Two Americans came to see the painting. They come from America, but they don't come from Wigan. And one American said, "Now I've got an idea. He said, if you short of it, put some in the attic." I said, "The attic is full." I always wonder, you know, where I'll put the next painting. But I just go on and on. Any art gallery can have these paintings to show them if they'll pay the insurance and take them away and bring them back again. I can't be more fair than that. One day, a doctor came with his wife. And he looked round and he said, "How much is that painting? What's the price of that?" I stood it for a while. But in the end, I couldn't stand it any longer. I said, "Get out of this house." Art is priceless. I would say, Bill, that all art of any kind is based on love of man for his fellow creatures and children. Love. This is what Christ said. I say the same. I paint because I love people, especially children.